Hey, what's up, Pete? Alright, so the pause I want is I want the pause at the top. Okay, so you come up here, stop here. Okay, you want to make sure you're balanced. I want a good shrug at the top. Hold it. Okay, hold that position for one Mississippi, and then come down. Okay, man? I just don't want to see this kind of like this movement happening, and you can actually see that on this last rep. So when you're coming up, well, you kind of actually can see your wrists and stuff moving. I'll slow that down a little bit. And just like pay attention to your hands. And notice how you like straighten out the wrist here. You kind of lose all the tension at the top. So we want to just hold that top position. Just kind of own that position and make sure you're nice and stable. Okay. All right. So I think this is the first time I'm noticing that you're using plates on your heels. I think it is. Unless, okay, yeah. So, obviously I know why. So if you do want to try heels, I think using a squat shoe would probably be a little bit better. For a lot of people, it does help with depth a little bit. But what also helps with depth is making sure that we're sitting our hips back before we start. All right. And as we're coming down to actively drive the knees out, and really just make sure that we're clearing space. Also, usually like a wider stance typically helps with getting depth a little bit. Okay. So just make sure we're sitting the hips back. We're pushing the knees out. And like I said, you might want to try to widen up your stance a little bit, kind of clear some extra space in your hips. And then on the way up, notice how kind of you're just shifting around in the hole a little bit. I want you to make sure that you're motionless and that you're staying back in your hips, okay? This tells me that the weight's shifting forward onto your toes. So really just consciously stay back in the hips, drive the knees out, push the chest up. And like I said, you might want to try to widen up the stance. But what I'll do is I'll recommend a squat shoe. And if that's the kind of direction that you want to go in, I think squatting in shoes are an okay idea. I think also benching with them as well. A lot of people see an improvement in their bench press by using heels. For some people, it allows them to kind of drive a little bit more with the feet. Okay. So what I like is see this back position here. All right. I need you to actively pull up in front of the J hooks. Watch what happens to your back. So notice how your shoulders kind of do this. So I want to make sure the shoulders are down and back. And literally there's no change in the back position. All right. And then you reset here. So I want to kind of minimize that movement from the shoulders by actively pulling on the bar this direction before we start, okay? Now, when we're in this pause position, I want you to use this as an opportunity to do a couple things. One, I want you to make sure you're squeezing your elbows together. It looks like your elbows are flaring. So at the bottom, keep the elbows together. And the other component of the pause is I want you to keep tension in the bar. So push up into the bar a little bit, and I want you to just lightly touch your shirt, all right? And the last thing I want you to do is make sure that your feet are in the ground and you're driving your knees out. Make sure that you're staying planted. Anytime we do pause work, I want you to use that as an opportunity to think about your cues and think about why we're doing this. But creating tension, keeping the elbows tight, keeping the feet planted is kind of what I want you to do in your head. And then honestly, like, I'm using 75% here. This should be an okay weight. If it's not, what you can do is we can reduce the reps a little bit. We can reduce it down to 2 and do 12 sets of 2 instead. Or reduce the weight a little bit if we're not able to get those cues in. So be open to changing that if you absolutely have to. But let's try to focus on those components for the bench for the next time, okay? I think your back position looks great, man. Your back's nice and flat. All right. But after passes and knees, I really want you to try to snap your hips through and really just be intentional about aggressively locking out. All right. I know you're trying to be in a good position and you're trying to do it safely. That's kind of the pull off the floor. You know, we want to make sure we're here. But once we get here, I want you to try to really accelerate up and try to snap your hips through. Okay. Just try to speed that up just a little bit. It's kind of tough without any like accommodating resistance. Usually, like when we're putting chains on there, like you're gonna inherently move faster in general, just because as you get higher, the weight will increase and you have to be more intentional about it. The problem with regular straight weight is as you go to stand up, the bar will naturally want to decelerate because it's like getting easier. So naturally, like we don't have to exert as much force and effort. So the only way to overcome that is by consciously trying to move faster and faster with it. So, all right, man, I hope this helps. Looking forward to seeing your videos later this week.